Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm back with, I'm not sure anyone's demanding it, but it's my review, real quick review of Thor Love and Thunder. Let me know what you think down below, just to say this up front. Do you like it when I do these sort of TV and movie reviews? I've only done a few in the past. They do get a lot of views, but very few comments, and I think a lot of the people watching them are not my regular viewers. So I'm not sure how much you guys actually care about these sort of things, but I'm a big fan of comic books, superhero stuff, and the MCU in particular. I would like to be a bigger fan of the DC stuff. I just haven't really enjoyed the direction they've taken over the last, say, 15 years of their movies. But I have really enjoyed most of the stuff from the MCU. And so I always see all of their movies. I've seen all of their TV shows, with the exception of a couple of the ones for Netflix that I didn't really like, that were have recently been sort of folded into the MCU proper. So I still haven't seen like the last season of Daredevil or the last season of Punisher or a couple others, but I've seen everything else, um, and particularly the movies. And I finally got around to seeing Love and Thunder. It just came available a couple weeks ago now um, on demand on Disney Plus. And normally I see them in the theater, but between COVID and the health issues I've been having, it's just difficult to get out to the theater. And it has been getting, as you may or may not know, very negative, mixed reviews. I want to say negative. They're not really negative, but they're very mixed. It actually has lower fan and critical rating than Thor 2, The Dark World, which for me is one of the worst Marvel movies they've ever done. And it's not even that bad, but I found both the first two Thor movies to be among the lowest of the Marvel movies. And so, even though I like Ragnarok, I wasn't that excited to see this. So we decided, you know what, let's just wait. And we watched it, and actually, we quite liked it, and I quite liked it. I Going into with low expectations probably helped, um, but I actually enjoyed it. It wasn't perfect, but there was a few things that I guess I wanted to talk about. I mean, one thing for me is I've seen in some of the reviews people talk about the humor not landing as much as being trying too hard. There was a few points where I felt like that was the case, and you know, there's a lot of hardcore fans that didn't like Ragnarok, but I really enjoyed Ragnarok. I thought it was a lot of fun, and parts of it were very funny. I didn't think that Love and Thunder was as funny, but I also didn't feel that like real try hard um, feeling like I did, for instance, with Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Now, that's a movie that where the first time I saw it, I was really disappointed, and I felt like they were trying way too hard to do all the same humor beats as the first one. I didn't really get that in this one. Again, a couple places they were trying too hard, but for the most part, I thought it was fine. I have not read the Mighty Thor, Lady Thor, or whatever you want to call comics with Jane Foster. So this is my introduction to that storyline. I have the sense that it was probably handled with a lot more depth in the comics. So if people are not liking the movie because they're disappointed with how that storyline plays out, again, I haven't read it, but I just had a sense that it did get kind of a thin adaptation. Like, I could tell that there was more to that than what we were getting, because you only have a 2 hour movie and the focus is on Thor. Whereas in the comics, you have so much more time and space to explore things, and Jane's the main character, right? So, so I can't really speak specifically to that criticism, but I did like the return of Jane. I felt like it could have been gone into a little more depth, but I enjoyed having her back. I like that storyline. It did add some needed gravitas to the movie. It is a tricky balance that Taika Waititi is trying to do with these Thor movies, to have the humor and the wackiness, but balance them with the pathos and the real emotion. I feel like it was a little more successful in Thor Ragnarok, but even though he wasn't in that much of it, I thought that Christian Bale's Gore the God Butcher, I thought it started off really strong. You have a lot of sympathy for his character, and um, it actually sort of makes having that set as the context for things makes the buffoonery in the humor scenes. It gives it an added element because it's funny, yes, but you're seeing it through the lens of being of self-awareness, of being aware that, oh, these guys are actually kind of a bunch of clowns. And so it's an interesting challenge that he's given himself to basically set up right in the opening scene that all the characters that you care about are actually also deserving of mockery. So it is a tricky balance, but for me, I think he pulls it off. Um, I thought the stuff with the kids actually was pretty good. My wife really liked it. Um, the part where Thor empowers all the children at the end, I don't know. Maybe I'm not giving my fellow comic fans enough credit, but there were several parts of the movie where, without having really read in depth a lot of the criticism, I had an idea that these are things that people were unhappy with, and that was one of them. Um, the character of Heimdall's child was one where I could just tell that the way that storyline went is something that a lot of comic book fans of a particular bent would be bent out of shape about, and would no doubt be very vocal online. And I thought all that was fine. So and again, my wife really liked the stuff with Thor giving the children some of his powers, so they to empowering them to fight back and sort of save themselves and stuff. And I'm influenced by my wife's opinion, so um, that may have had an effect. But I mean, overall, like I enjoyed it. Nitpicks, yeah, they have the same as Ragnarok, which is he doubled down on making fun on the Warriors 3. I know that was like a main criticism, not just from me, but from everybody that are big fans of the comics and the first two movies, is the way he just like killed off the Warriors 3 like they were a bunch of chumps, and he definitely doubled down on that in this one. Um, and I'm not always a fan of when creators do that, sort of like acknowledge fan complaints by sort of making fun of the fans with the thumb in the eye. So I can understand if people were rubbed wrong by that. I didn't care for it myself, but it wasn't really a big deal. Um, I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. It's been like a week or so since I watched it, so some of my more in-depth thoughts about the film are sort of escaping me right now that I've finally had a chance to make the video. But I read some of the reviews, and honestly, like I just didn't see what the big deal was. I go onto some of the comic forums I'm on, and the people were like, "Oh, I watched the first 5 minutes, and it was so terrible that I just saved myself by never watching the rest of it because it was so horrible." And I don't know. I didn't think it was a big deal. I was expecting more from the Guardians of the Galaxy than just the first scene. Um, but that is a common complaint that I have with the Marvel films, where they'll set up things at the end of one movie, like a new status quo, and then at the beginning of the next, instead of exploring what they set up, they'll just quickly dump it and do something totally different. That happens a lot in the Marvel movies, and it's very frustrating. Makes me feel like they're not really planning things as cohesively as they claim to be, or as it seems like they are, because um, I want to see them follow through, and they didn't really do that. So like having Thor go off with the Guardians of the Galaxy at the end of Endgame turned out to be a total nothing burger. It like it teased a potentially really cool sort of team up with them, and then it just immediately got rid of it. And I'm sure that had something to do with, James Gunn being brought back for Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and having different plans and not wanting to be used and stuff. And I think that's why this happens in a lot of Marvel movies, is that one creator will set something up, and then when Marvel brings in whoever's going to be directing the next project, they have a different vision, and Marvel tends to actually let them work with that. So, but that was frustrating a little bit. But I am curious on that same note where we're going to see Thor in future movies, because they've now set up this interesting thing where Thor is basically a father and he's raising this powerful little girl. I think you could do some really cool stuff with that in sort of a lone wolf and cub sort of way. You got to be really careful anytime you have kids involved. I personally find kids in movies and TV shows to be super annoying most of the time. So I think you got to be really careful with what you're going to do with that, if anything, because again, when we get the next one, next time we see Thor, that might have been dumped out the window off, between movies. But overall, I thought it was good. I thought it was much better than the word of mouth it's been getting and the reviews that I've been reading. And I certainly thought it was better than Dark World. I liked it better than the first Thor movie. I'd have to rewatch the first Thor because I do feel like that's more of a contained story, like beginning, middle, and end, whereas this is starting to get a little freeform. But I certainly wouldn't put it, like, rank it nearly as low as some other people were doing. It's like one of the worst reviewed Marvel films, and I don't think that really has that much to do with the actual quality of this movie so much as a little bit of fan dissatisfaction with Phase 4 as a whole, where I think Marvel had a lot of goodwill built up for some of its previous movies. Now it doesn't have, it's the opposite. It's got some bad will built up in the fan community, at least, if not the wider, casual movie going base. And I think people, some of the harder core fans, a lot of them are predisposed to dislike the Marvel movies now, and so there's just a lot of complaining about things that 5 years ago people would have been fine with. So we'll see. We'll see. I feel like we're gonna get some really good Marvel movies coming up. I haven't loved most of Phase 4 either, but I think with Black Panther coming up and the Marvels and some of the stuff we're going to see next year, Quantumania sort of setting up Kang, I think Marvel's going to pull things back together. I think we're about to see some really good stuff from them. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Again, let me know if you want me to talk more or less about movies and TV shows. I'm curious to see what you think about that. And let me know what you think of Thor. Until next time, adventure awaits.